In this video, we're going to work with frequency tables and histograms. So in this first question, we're going to use the data to complete the frequency table, which is right here, and the histogram, which we will create here on this coordinate plane. And we want to make sure to do three things: include a title, label our axes, and use consistent spacing for the intervals. So let's go ahead and give it a title right now before we forget. So the title, it's going to be frequency of weights. Let's just say frequency of weights. So we got the title done. The second part is to label our axes. So the horizontal axis, the x-axis would be the intervals, and the vertical axis, the y-axis, would be the frequency. All right, so let's look at our data first and go ahead and complete the frequency table. So what we're doing is we're looking at this interval, and this is the interval of 5 to 9 pounds. And we have all this data here. We have these measurements of weight measurements, and we want to put how many times we see something that falls within this interval. So how many of these measurements are between 5 and 9 pounds, including 5 and 9? So let's see, we have 6, 9, 8, 8. These are the only weight measurements that I can see that are in that interval between 5 and 9. So that's 4. So the frequency is 4 because we see 4 measurements that fall within that interval. So I'm going to cross those out, and we go to the next interval. So we want to look at all the measurements that fall within 10 and 14 pounds. So we have 10, 11, 11, 12, 11, 13, 10. So all the ones between 10 and 14, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that fall into that interval. Then we go to the next interval, we have 15 through 19 pounds. So 15 through 19, we have 1, 2. And then finally, we have the last interval will be everything between 20 and 24 pounds. And that's just 1. So we have our frequency table completed, and now we need to just put it on the graph. So we already labeled our axes. The third thing is we want to use consistent spacing for our intervals. So what that means is all these intervals are the same size, right? There's 5 to 9, that's 5, right? 10 to 14, that's another interval of 5. So we want to make sure that they're all the same. So in this graph, do we have enough space to make them each 2 wide? Looks like we do, because this could be our first interval. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Our first interval would be the 5 to 9 pounds. And then our second interval would be 10 to 14 pounds. Third interval would be 15 to 19 pounds. And our last interval would be 20 to 24 pounds. So you don't have to make them 2 squares wide. We could have done each like 1 square, but it's kind of prettier, I think, if the intervals are a little bit wider. But that's just a preference. And then the frequency, we need to also label the vertical axis, and we know that the highest number that we're going to see is 7, so we want to make sure we have space. So I would make 1 unit equal to 1. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's go ahead and make our histogram now. So our first interval, we have 4 that fall within this. So we're going to go ahead and draw a line here, and we can fill it in. So beautiful. All right, you don't have to color it this much. I'm just having a good time. All right, so the next one is going to be 7 is the frequency. So I'm going to draw a line here at 7. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Very ugly. Okay, I'll stop. And the next one would be 2. So we want to draw our line at 2. And the final one would be 1. So we have our histogram now. I probably should have used the highlighter to fill it in. That would have been a lot easier, but I did not do that. Okay, next time. So we have our histogram. We've completed everything. We've followed the instructions, and we're done. So what does this histogram tell us? Histograms are useful because you can look at it really quickly and kind of think where the most weights are. So say that this is a weights of, I don't know, cats, right? So we're looking at a group of cats, and so the most frequent interval that we see is this one, the one with the frequency of 7. So most of the cats have weights that fall in between 10 and 14 pounds. Some of the cats are a little bit lighter with the 5 to 9 pounds, and then some of the cats are heavier. There's only one cat that's 20 to 24 pounds, so that's a pretty fat cat. All right, so let's go ahead and do a second one here. So we have our data, price per yard. This didn't tell us, okay, weights. It didn't say weight of cats, but I'm gonna put cats here because I like to know what I'm talking about. There's the cat. Okay. Price per yard. So $9. We have all this price data, and we need to fill it in. So let's go ahead and start by including a title. So we want to make sure that this graph has a title. So it would be frequency of price per yard. All right, and we want to label our axes, so we know that this is the frequency axis. Frequency, not frequently, and this is the interval, price intervals. I should have done on this one, I should have done weight intervals. Okay. And we have our title, we have our axes labeled, and now we're ready to look at our data. So how many of these data points, how many of these prices are in between $4 and $5? Put the dollar signs here to make it easier. So how many are between $4 and $5? We have $5, $4, $4, $5. Looks like that's it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. How many are between $6 and $7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many are between $8 and $9? 1, 2, 3. How many are between $10 and $11? Just 1. And how many from $12 to $13? Just 1. All right. And so our price intervals, we can go ahead and set those up. And we have 5 intervals, just like, so that's a little more than last time. So to make sure we have enough space, I'm gonna start here with the first one. Interval 1, interval 2, interval 3, 4, 5. And so this first one would be the $4 to $5. And then we'll have 6 to 7, 8 to 9, 10 to 11, and 12 to 13. All right, so now all we have to do is frequency. We can make our units 1 on this one as well. 2, 3, 4. If we wanted to make our graph a little taller, we could actually stretch it out and make this 1 and this 2 and this 3, but I don't want to do that. Let's not do that. So the first frequency interval will be $4 to $5. The frequency is 4. So I'm going to go to 4. Make my little, I'm going to use the highlighter this time because it looks cool. Isn't it beautiful? Okay. And then the next one, $6 to $7. Our frequency is 5. Oops. 5. And our third interval, we have 3. And our fourth interval is 1. And our fifth interval is also 1. All right. So do we have everything? We have our title, we have our labels. What is this histogram telling us? It's telling us that, looking at price per yard, probably price per yard of fabric. So most of the prices of this data set are around this range. So, and then some of the more expensive fabrics are right here. It's just a nice way to visualize your data. All right, so now we get to the second page. Determine if each of the following histograms is uniform, symmetric, or skewed. If it's skewed, please specify if it is right or left skewed. So when a histogram is uniform, what that means is that all the frequency intervals are about the same length. So I'll draw a little example here. This is not very pretty, but you can see they're all a little bit different, but there's not like a curve or not really like a shape to the data. It seems like all the data are all the intervals are kind of pretty similar in lengths. That would be uniform. Symmetric, we often see a bell curve, something like this. And that's symmetric because if you were to kind of chop it in half down the middle right here, it's like both sides pretty much have the same shape to them. It's not always perfect, but we could say something is fairly symmetric. And then skewed is, you can have right skewed or left skewed. And that happens when you have something like this. Or like this. So you look at the first one I just drew and you might think, oh, that's left skewed because you see most of the data points on the left, but it's actually right skewed. And this is left skewed. So this one has a right skew, this one has a left skew. And some of these charts that we're going to look at, some of these histograms are not like exactly cut and dry like these examples that I have. So let's take a look at number 3. We have, I don't know, what do you think? To me, it looks like all of these are pretty much the same length. Like there's a couple taller ones kind of in the middle, but it's certainly not like symmetric. So I would say this one is uniform. Let's look at number 4. Number 4 looks kind of symmetric to me. It's not perfect exactly, but if you cut it down the middle, it's pretty similar, right? It's got a tall thing in the middle and then kind of sort of tall things here and here and then short things here. So it's kind of like a bell curve. So I'd say it's fairly symmetric. If it makes you feel better, you can write fairly. it's not perfect, right? Number 5, it's not symmetric. It doesn't seem like it's exactly skewed that much either. So this is kind of one where it's a little bit subjective. It's kind of hard to tell. So our choices are uniform, symmetric, or skewed. I guess, I would still say that it's fairly symmetric. And that doesn't really that's not an answer that makes me happy inside, but that's it's not uniform and it's not really skewed either. So I'd say it's fairly symmetric. Number 6 definitely looks like a uniform one to me. Number 7. Now this one does look to be skewed because it definitely goes down from left to right. There's higher stuff over here and lower stuff over here. So I would say that this one has a right skew. So we'd say it's right skewed. This one looks to me like it has a left skew. Not perfect, but somewhat left skewed. This one is interesting because it's almost, it's like the opposite of the bell curve. So it is kind of symmetric, right? We also call this one bimodal. Oops. Because there's 2 modes. Remember, the mode is the most popular interval, so it looks like there's 2 of them that are about the same height. So it's bimodal. That means it has 2 modes. All right. So when we look at histograms like this, like I said, it's not always going to be clear what it is, but you want to just do your best to classify them according to these classifications.